pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to approval of the agenda. So moved.
Madam Chairman, I would like to add an item 9B to the agenda, an action item, a formal invitation to the Board of County Commissioners for a joint meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to approve the amended
Second.
agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That brings us to the John H. Crowder Service Award. I will turn it over to Miss Kathy Heintel. Want to stand up? Me? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The late John H. Crowder spent more than 30 years serving the children of Union County. As a living tribute to him and his legacy, the Union County Board of Education awards the John H. Crowder Service Award every month to an outstanding high school student making a difference in their school and community. Students who receive this award are not only academically successful, but also have an established history of community service. Tonight, we award the John H. Crowder Service Award for April to a senior at Weddington High School. Danya Rana epitomizes what Weddington Warriors Nation defines as the warrior way. Is that right? Danya leads by example and inspires her peers to serve the community with compassion by facilitating connections with students and community liaisons. Danya serves as a president of the Literary Society, National English Honor Society, and Mentors Club, while also being a member of various other clubs and service organizations. Danya has a passion for community outreach and a particular love for literacy. She has served as a volunteer mentor for elementary school-aged children living in underprivileged areas in Charlotte. She started a Reading Buddy program in partnership with Weddington High that allows teens to help children develop their critical reading skills to create a passion for reading and meeting state standards for testing. She also started an art project program through which specific art classes were offered weekly to children to support and encourage their creativity and self-expression. You do a lot of stuff. Additionally, through her work in National Honor Society, she has served as a middle school math tutor, offering weekly tutoring to achieve their math concepts. Danya is a very passionate individual and is always looking for ways she can contribute to her school and community. He shows that. After graduation, she plans to attend a 4-year college and would like to work in the global health field. Board members, please join me in congratulating Danya Rana as the April 2022 recipient of the John H. Crowder Service Award. You're amazing. You're going to do amazing things. Thanks for all you have done for your school. We will now have the influencers recognitions from Dr. Harris.
Good evening. We are pleased to recognize 2 outstanding employees who have been named the UCPS Influencers for April 2022. This program celebrates the passion, dedication, and hard work of UCPS employees. Each month, our staff members, students, families, and community members nominate UCPS employees to be recognized for a positive influences they've had on our organization. Tonight, I'm honored to present Ms. Corinne Colon, a teacher at Parkwood High School, and Ms. Christine Skrokowski, Nurse Supervisor for Essential Services. I will now invite our nominators to the podium to read their submissions and recognize our honorees' accomplishments.
Good evening. I'm Erin Muldoon, a parent of a student in Miss Cologne's classroom. Miss Cologne, will you please come up? Miss Cologne is my son's exceptional children's coordinator. She's not just a teacher at school. She is invested personally. She has always and continues to go the extra mile for her students. We are fortunate enough to have her be the exceptional children's coordinator at Parkwood High School. She treats the children like she would treat her own. No matter her workload, she's always available to discuss any concerns and/or needs of my student. Her personal and professional investment reflects in the children's success. I could not ask for a better leader, teacher, or mentor for my child. Thank you never seems to be enough. I have seen firsthand how she is changing and enhancing lives. She truly is amazing, and I'm so thankful that we are privileged to have her at Parkwood.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Clark, a school nurse at Weddington Middle School, and I'm pleased to present Ms. Skrutowski with this award. Christine, will you come up and stand by me? Christine is an inspiration to me for her tenacity, strength, and leadership during one of the most difficult times in school nursing history. COVID was a game changer for nursing in the schools. She's been an outstanding leader during this time when nursing roles were changing quickly and frequently. Christine met the challenges with grace and patience. A true leader is someone who gets in the trenches with you, as she did. Christine remained professional and worked hard to support the nurses throughout the schools. The COVID response required ever-changing protocols, hiring of additional staff, writing protocols and instructing staff on how to implement them, physically and emotionally supporting nurses, developing a COVID helpline for the community and the district, scheduling vaccination for staff, and reporting tons of data to the entities requesting it. One cannot possibly express all that has happened in the last 2 years in a sentence or two. Essentially, a tsunami hit school nursing, and we needed to keep our heads above water. Christine worked tirelessly to cover all the bases. Even when we were all pushed past our breaking points, she bent and did not snap. She repeatedly encouraged us and worked hard to support us. She never gave up on us. She fought for us. I respect her for her response during these difficult times. I am so thankful she was one of my supervisors during one of the toughest work situations I've ever been in. I did not quit because she did not quit. She inspires teamwork. She's a great nurse and a great human, and we are lucky to have her at UCPS. Thank you.
I will now read the UCPS Influencers Proclamation from the Board of Education and Dr. Houlihan. Whereas the Union County Board of Education values the hard work of each employee within the district, whereas performance is an essential part of the district operations, whereas Cologne and Christine Skrokowski exemplify performance, dedication, teamwork essential to the success of the district and its students. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Education for Union County Public Schools, and Dr. Andrew Houlihan, Superintendent, hereby proclaim Ms. Cologne and Ms. Skrokowski as UCPS influencers for the month of April 2022. Congratulations on your outstanding honor, and thank you for all that you do.
For a long time. That brings us to public comments. At every regular meeting of the board, up to 60 minutes have been allotted for public comments. The board will not respond to public comments. However, a member may ask that the chair obtain clarification. Residents, parents, students, and employees of the district will receive priority on the list of speakers. If the speaker is not present when his or her name is called, the opportunity to speak will be considered waived. Only persons signed up to speak. Speakers may not give their time to another person or have someone speak on their behalf. Speakers may address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. The board will not hear in open session complaints about the performance of school personnel, personnel issues, or confidential student issues. Should a speaker wish to seek information or share items that may not be shared during public comments, our staff are available to address your concerns or provide information. Dr. Brad Breedlove, Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Bashan Harris, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Colin Moore, Assistant Superintendent for Administration and Operations, and Jared McCraw, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, are here to assist. Our first speaker tonight is Melissa Vilanowitz. I do not believe she's here, so we will move to Maria Reed.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Recently, North Carolina DPI took the authority to decide on vital aspects about children without parental knowledge, involvement, and consent. Number one, they ordered North Carolina schools to stop listing students' legal names and instead list students' preferred names on all state records. Number two, they removed the gender of students from all state records. Students can now unofficially choose a different gender, have no gender, or have both genders. All of that without parental knowledge and consent. So far, DPI has done this in at least 3 North Carolina districts. It wouldn't surprise me if next they would order removal of male and female signs from school bathrooms, all under the false name of fighting gender discrimination. DPI stands that students shouldn't be told who they are and they should find their identity on their own, which is great. But then why is it okay to communicate that he is black and oppressed and that she is white and the oppressor, and based on that, he and she can never be equal? At the same time, he is not a he and she is not a she. Hypocrisy at its best. Again, using our kids to promote narratives and create chaos. Follow the money. This is not caring for our children's well-being. This is destroying and hurting our children and their future. Listing preferred names instead of legal names on school records creates confusion and safety issues. But most importantly, it encourages students to stomp over the names chosen with love by their parents, and for many, the names they were baptized with. Many children carry the names of their ancestors, names of those who fought for this country, who gave their lives for our children, and now their names are being discarded. This, in a way, is an act of erasing family history and traditions. DPI is encouraging students that hiding such things from parents is not only normal and acceptable, but also empowering. Under the false pretense that students can find approval and comfort in state authorities, they are teaching children to be dishonest, to disrespect parents, and to deviate from families. I have faith that you, our Board of Education, will not allow such perversions in our district and stand against DPI's order. We are blessed to have you on our children's side. We are blessed that you value and respect the family as an authority and foundation of any healthy and strong nation. Thank you very much for all you do for us and for children, of course.
Kristen Smith.
Good evening. Last month, I stood before you and showed my concern for our schools and our teachers in the face of unrelenting negativity. I shared all of the good that we can do if we come together on projects to support the underserved schools and children in our county. I asked for all of the people that care so deeply for our kids to come together to help support our schools, our teachers, and the futures of the littlest citizens of Union County. And tonight I stand before you with hope that we can agree that the teaching shortage will affect us all. The number of graduating high schoolers that are pursuing an education degree has dropped precipitously over the last 10 to 15 years. This has been in the making for years, and it won't be fixed overnight, but there are things we can do together, no matter your politics or beliefs. 2 years ago, when COVID shut down schools and we were thrust into the unenviable position of overnight educators, most of us realized that our kids' teachers were closer to superheroes than mere mortals. We grappled with third grade math or sixth grade science from home, without the years of specialized education or experience that our amazing teachers possess. We heaped praise upon our teachers, swore to buy them anything they needed, support them in any way we could once our children were back under their wings learning where they belonged. How quickly we forget, it seems. Our teachers went from heroes to pedophiles in the blink of an eye. How does such a thing happen? How is it that one moment we can see how amazing and incomparable our UCPS educators are, and the next have parents calling teachers groomers because they don't like the books that their children don't have to read? It seems the end goal is the destruction of our public school system. For how can it continue without the amazing educators that made us #1 in the state? We underpay them, we overwork them, we underappreciate them. We expect them to be parent, teacher, counselor, and superhero, but without as much as a thank you. So again, I stand before you all and I say, wake up. Do something positive, something supportive, something helpful. Fight for higher wages. Fight for support staff. Send them a note of appreciation. Give them a hug. Tell them how incredibly valued and important they are. Stand up for public education. Stand up for these teachers that love, protect, and empower your children every day at school. Be part of the solution. Be part of positive change. Be part of keeping our teachers in schools with our kids where they are so desperately needed and wanted. And to the board, I ask you, loudly thank our educators. Heap the praise where it belongs, on them. Work to support our existing educators. Work to make this a field that children look up to and want to join when they grow up. Do your part to protect our public schools and work to get more educators in the field. Thank you.
Jody McConkey. Stacy Swanson.
Good evening, and I appreciate the time tonight. This year, my child made the school musical. They practiced, they performed at the Night Theater in Charlotte, and last Friday, I'm happy to say that they gave 3 performances, 2 to the student body and 1 for their families. And I wanted to publicly thank Mr. Bruce Becker and Ms. Jessica Wright from Weddington Elementary for giving her that opportunity to be a part of that. I was so proud to see my child say her lines, sing, and I didn't know she could dance. Her participation motivated her to be more engaged at school because she just couldn't miss practice and let down her castmates. But beyond the performance, I saw other life lessons learned. If anyone here has had experience with performance or public speaking, then you know that stage fright's very real. For those children, it may have been their first experience with performance as elementary school students. And those that were nervous, others held their hand, reassured them, gave them words of encouragement. They were a team. The children were kind, supportive, and empathetic. There's been a lot of talk lately about getting back to basics. Teamwork, empathy, compassion, and inclusion are basics. No group can function without them. Arts programs are where many students develop these skills. And I do want to remind everyone here that the last time we got back to basics, so to speak, was the No Child Left Behind Act. An act that caused the elimination or significant reduction of many music and arts programs all over the country. So I sincerely hope that by going back to these basics, we do not suggest that the arts take a back seat. Now more than ever, and especially after having the past 2 years that we've had, our students need the arts and the ability to positively express themselves. I want more students to feel the pride my child felt on stage. That feeling of being included. And at the end of the day, isn't feeling like we belong or part of something that we all crave as humans. Lastly, I wanted to thank UCPS for their parent education series. My spouse attended the suicide awareness seminar after a coworker lost their 12-year-old to suicide several weeks ago because of bullying at school. These seminars are important for all of us to hear, and learn. I hope that UCPS will continue this effort of creating important bridges between parents and schools and doing what's best for all of our children together. Thank you.
Dan Oslander.
Good evening. The art stuff is amazing, and I'll just right off the bat say I was really proud last Thursday to get to escort the Cuthbertson High School concert bands up to Mooresville for their competition and to hear them play, and what they do and what the faculty has done with these kids is amazing. But that's not what's really on my subject tonight. What I want to talk about is the realities of bullying today in the schools. Bullying, it's a quaint term, goes back to the old schoolyard bullies that we may have dealt with or our parents dealt with when they were kids. That's very different from what our kids are experiencing today. The world today is more polarized. It's a harsher place. Bullying is now a catch-all term for painful, hateful, or even criminal acts that are occurring in our schools with regularity. An adopted child of Russian origin with a brown complexion is told that he should go back home. That's not just bullying, it's racism. The child was adopted from an orphanage as a toddler, and the only home that he has ever known is here in the United States. A teenage girl with a physical disability is told that you're already disabled, you should just go kill yourself. That's not just bullying. It's dark, suggestive verbal abuse that could lead her to self-harm. She's already seen as different because she attends school with her service dog, and at the moment has no hair because it started falling out in chunks last week. The last thing this young lady needs is her peers chipping away at her self-esteem. When that same young lady is called a kike, that's not just bullying, it's anti-Semitism, and it's a hate crime. When the same student who made that remark sexually explicitly makes comments to two girls in the hallway in a middle school, that's not just bullying, it's sexual harassment. When that young lady, the same young lady, is pushed in the band room by a classmate and she falls into a drum set and gets hurt, that's not just bullying, it's assault. She was left with a scar that still reminds her of that event even to today. When a young man who has an autoimmune disease that affects his muscles and joints is pushed face first into a wall hard enough that he's physically injured, that's not just bullying, it's assault. That young man was in so much pain after the assault that he had to attend school the rest of the week sitting in his wheelchair. How do I know about all these events? The victims described are my own children, and these events all happened in UCPS buildings over the last few years. We owe it to the students to do better. We owe them a safe, threat-free school environment. We owe them the opportunities to talk out their fear and anger, to be comfortable with students who are different, and to learn to appreciate the differences that make each of us who we are. To do this, we need resources and programs. Low per pupil spending isn't something to be proud of. It highlights where you can cut the corners on student support. ASCA recommends one counselor per 250 students. In our cluster, the caseload is almost double that, 500 kids per counselor. Student social and emotional education consists of assemblies and discipline, not supportive training and positive attention. School isn't just about academic success and test scores. It's about creating young men and women who have the social, emotional, and life skills to be positive members of our society. We must do better.
Claire,
Madam Chairman, before we go on to the next speaker, could I ask the gentleman his name again?
Yes, sir. My name is Dan House.
Would you reach out to me, please?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to discuss this further with you one-on-one.
Clara Stevens. Aaron Muldoon.
Good evening. So I wanted to comment on something I saw on social media recently regarding our board, where a resident made the comments, how much CRT and how many explicit books have come into the schools during their tenure. Politicians like to take all the credit, but never seem to address the problems created on their watch. This person also commented on useless, watered-down policy that does not stop this material from coming into the schools. I, for one, do not hold the board accountable for all issues in this extreme. People need to realize there is a process and committees and legislature that surround many of the decisions that get made behind closed doors, and that you as the board have to work around them. I know that there are some people who feel that they can wave a magic wand, and because they want something to be a certain way, it's just suddenly going to happen by their sheer will. And I can tell you from experience, it doesn't happen that way, and it's quite frankly not the way the world works. Our board, in my opinion, has done an amazing job working to try to accommodate what parents ask for. So to the concerned, somewhat disgruntled parent, use your parental rights. This is not a new concept. I've been flexing my parental rights since my children were born. I had issues regarding material being taught in my child's class and what I considered over-testing. So I wrote my emails, took myself up to the school to meet with whoever I needed to, and I got it rectified. However, what is appropriate for my children may not be for another parent's child. So sweeping reform is not necessarily the answer for every issue. There are books and subject matter that I feel should not be covered in a classroom setting. Teachers are not licensed psychologists, and they do not have the expertise to know in a class of 30 plus children how a certain subject matter will affect a child or in what manner. And I, for one, do not deem it appropriate for a teacher to make that call about my children. So for me, these are some of the reasons schools should be more about math, history, science, reading, and language arts, not to neglect their need when it comes to bullying, because I think that's really important. Issues that are considered to be of moral and social significance should start at the home. And my children are still my children regardless, and I make the final decision regarding their well-being. Parents need to realize our school is made up of many different types of people from all walks of life, and I would imagine we all want to be accommodated. And again, you have the right to make the decisions for your children, and I suggest you avail yourself of these rights. So don't let the rhetoric of parental rights fool you or turn you off. These are nothing new and are valuable tools for parents to help make individual decisions. I personally don't let policy or Facebook groups make decisions for my children. The power has always been with me as a parent. I want my children to remember me as the mom who fought for them and not with everyone else. And I've always taught my children what is right for you may not be right for someone else. And I know that my children are watching me, and I need to practice what I preach, and it's time to walk that walk. Thank you.
Heidi Cristaldi.
Good evening. This is the third month in a row that I've come before you to ask you to figure out a way to get indoctrination out of our schools. I've given you many examples, and not one of which is in the curriculum, where it can be seen, read, reviewed, or dealt with. This indoctrination is happening one teacher, one classroom, one comment, and one action at a time throughout a student's career. These individual interactions are building up to the point where our kids are internalizing and believing this propaganda, and it must stop. The UCPS Employee Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct explicitly says, among many other things, that teachers will always present political and civic issues without personal bias and with reasonable effort to present all sides of an issue. Also, the employees of UCPS are to promote that the United States of America is comprised of persons who are created equally. One race or sex is not inherently superior to another race or sex. And that's so interesting to me, because if you remember any of my examples from the prior 2 months, some UCPS teachers are very clearly breaking this code and standard. They are continuing to encourage students to accept tenets of critical race theory, believe in certain social justice causes, and lean a certain way on the political spectrum. And that is not their job per your policy. So how do we solve this? To start, I spent a lot of time reviewing the UCPS and State Board of Education policies on teacher evaluations, and I've concluded that the evaluation process as outlined in the policies is simply not enough. Teachers need to be watched more closely. We leave these teachers alone with very little formal oversight for hours, days, and weeks at a time with our students, our very impressionable kids. We need teachers evaluated more frequently. Currently, a teacher who's been around for more than 3 years needs to be evaluated 40 minutes annually per the policy. 40 minutes. There are 177 instructional days in a school year, and someone only has to informally attend their class for 2 20-minute sessions. Also, teacher evaluations, in my opinion, should extend beyond a teacher present material. Classroom materials, lesson plans, planned assignments, as well as completed student assignments all need to be reviewed each time to gather information on how the teacher's performing. I also know that myself and my kids have never been asked to review a teacher. Why is that? Finally, and most importantly, we need cameras in the classrooms. I work in corporate America, and my company monitors my emails, my phone, my Zoom calls. There are cameras in conference rooms, hallways, and offices, and all of this is to hold me accountable to my words on behalf of the company. So why are schools any different? The teachers need to be held accountable for the job that they're doing for us. We are their stakeholders, and through our tax dollars, we are their employers, and we should be able to hear and see what they're doing and provide feedback. We need to crack down. Every day we don't do anything is another day that some teachers are breaking this code of ethics and standard of conduct, sharing their opinions and indoctrinating our kids, and this must stop. I know that if I were as blatant as some of these teachers and ignoring my company's code of ethics and standard of conduct, I would be fired.
Sandra Green, Crystal Robinson, David Soriano Garcia.
Good evening. In 2001, Elton John released a song called American Triangle. This song is dedicated to Matthew Shepard, who was a college student who on October 6th, 1998, was being and left to die, tied to a fence in the cold wind of Laramie, Wyoming. Why, you ask? It was because he was gay. The song had a line that was really touching. It reads, "Hey, what you don't understand." When you think about it, he was very much correct. We have events like Black History Month, Pride Month, and Autism Awareness Week, which happened last week, just so people can learn to understand the struggles and support people who are diagnosed with ASD or LGBTQ+, or people of color, etc., rather than hating and putting them down for those differences, which we may never experience. In order for us to have a society that is well-educated, tolerant, and understanding of differences, we need to allow children to expose themselves to books and stories that may be out of their comfort zone. These include stories of people who may have experienced sexual assault, racism, xenophobia, or homophobia. However, some people are so strongly opposed to people reading these types of stories because it is, quote, inappropriate and uncomfortable. Now, I'm pretty sure we all know who Judy Blume is. She said, I quote, "I believe that censorship grows out of fear, and because fear is contagious, some parents are easily swayed. Book banning satisfies their needs to feel in control of their children's lives. This fear is often disguised as moral outrage. They want to believe that if their children don't read about it, their children don't know about it, and if their children don't know about it, then it won't happen. It does happen, however, and people need to understand that. Not understanding the uniqueness of others has taken lives. Matthew Shepard, Lawrence King, and Emmett Till are only some of hundreds of thousands of people whose stories we may never know. There are different types of books, which makes sense because there are different types of people. How many people do you think actually seek comfort in a good book? More than you might think. This issue is about a lot more than what we read. It's about the ability to escape the issues we're faced in the stories of those who experience the same struggles. Now, while I appreciate that people are here expressing their concerns with literature taught in schools, I don't appreciate that some parents are trying to push their personal beliefs on me and other students. You do not get to take what I can or cannot read. Yes, you're free to impose those restrictions on your children. However, you are not responsible for me or any other child. My parent does not my mother does not co-parent with you. She is very strong enough to parent on her own. She is a huge inspiration to me, and I'm very thankful for having her as my mother. In the words of Zia Chavez, preservation of one's culture does not require contempt or disrespect for other people's cultures.
Colleen Kamalnik.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here to speak on vaccines, specifically those children 5 and older. According to the VAERS website, as of March 25th, there have been 1.2 million COVID vaccine adverse event reports. Of those, 145,000 were hospitalized. 26,000 were COVID vaccine reported deaths. Some common adverse events include miscarriages, heart attacks, myocarditis, and other permanent disabilities. To make matters worse, VAERS is a voluntary reporting system that has been estimated to account for only 1% of vaccine injuries. To put that into perspective, today, April 5th, the covid.cdc.gov website shows 979,000 deaths from COVID. That's a staggering amount of people, no doubt. But of the 79 million cases of COVID in U.S., only represents 1.22%. So we are encouraging, and in some cases mandating, a vaccine for a virus with a 98.78 survival rate to date. On Tuesday, October 26, Eric Rubin acknowledged that we're never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is unless we start giving it, when referencing giving coronavirus vaccines to children 5 to 11. My child's not your guinea pig. What is concerning is the CDC is soliciting every school district in America to host at least one pop-up vaccine clinic in the coming weeks as their middle and high school students come back to school, according to the wecandothis.hhs.gov website.
What would be the reason for a school to host a clinic when so many options are readily available? My fear is to circumvent parental consent. Many think this idea is outlandish, but according to WHO and their consideration regarding consent in vaccinating children and adolescents between 6 and 17-year-olds pamphlet, under the heading Common Approaches for Obtaining Consent for Vaccination, item number 3, an implied consent process by which parents are informed of imminent vaccination through social mobilization and communication, sometimes including letters directly addressed to the parents. Subsequently, physical presence of the child or adolescent with or without an accompanying parent at the vaccination session is considered to imply consent. Kid just went to school. This practice is based on the opt-out principle, and parents who do not consent to vaccination are expected to implicitly take steps to ensure their child or adolescent does not participate in the vaccination session. This may include not letting the child or adolescent attend school on the vaccination day if vaccine delivery occurs through schools. This, coupled with the North Carolina Statute 90-21.1, when a physician may treat a minor child without consent of the parent, guardian, or person in loco parentis, item 4, where the parents refuse to consent to a procedure and the necessity. Thank you.
Patrick Siska.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, I'd like to talk about removing access to books based on content, the indoctrination of children, and American values. People have been saying they don't want CRT in our school systems. It's a discussion topic in grad school seminars on the impact of race relations on systems for anybody that hasn't followed this recently. I thought there was no way that it was being taught, honestly. And comes to turn out, I think I was wrong about that. Here's my thinking. We have individuals with their own ideas. They form organizations around core ideologies, but they're still made up of individuals. Those organizations then interact with all kinds of others to form a system. Not all organizations in a system are racist. Most aren't, but the influence of some individuals does come through. There are many organizations here tonight. Each of the schools in Union County is an organization. So is the BOE, teachers, students, staff. They all come together as the Union County school system. Now, when parent groups want the school system to stop teaching about racism and persecution, and the BOE listens, we are demonstrating systemic racism. And we're putting it on YouTube for everybody to watch at home. So if your goal is to show exactly how systems are influenced by racism, this should do it. And we can say that CRT is being taught by the people in this room. Now let's ask what this does. Banning books about discrimination, intolerance of minorities in the LGBTQ plus community, showing that it's right to isolate and exclude individuals for being different, demonstrating to children in no uncertain terms that those that do not conform to norms defined by some organization will not be allowed in school. If that's not the indoctrination of kids, I don't know what is. Somebody recently asked me to define fascism. It's a political system that advances organizations over individuals. The farm is important, not the farmer. And if a farmer doesn't want to be a farmer, then he is a problem. That's fascism. It's opposed to individualism, intellectualism, multiculturalism, and education. Mussolini, Hitler, Franco, Salazar, Stalin, Mao, they all had the same strategy. And if you want to tell ethnic minorities and gay kids that they don't belong, those guys have your back. They all did the exact same thing. Now, if you heard those names and thought, man, that was 75 years ago, you should be right, but here we are. In America, organizations are fine. They're protected by the First Amendment, but we care about individual liberty a whole lot more. We believe in liberty and justice for all when we take the pledge. Thank you.
Mark King.
Hi, I'm Mark King. I'm an Indian Trail resident, homeowner, and taxpayer. My wife and I have 3 Union County Public School students, one at Hemby Bridge Elementary, one at Porter Ridge Middle, and one at Porter Ridge High School. And relevant to this topic, I also have a Master of Library Science from North Carolina Central University. And I signed up for a time slot today because after listening to the meeting last month, it came to my attention that some of the speakers indicated that the school board simply had no right to remove certain books from the schools or from the libraries. And also, after having an inappropriate book assigned to my high school student, I just wanted to come and share my thoughts on this. First of all, the Board of Education, do you have a right to limit access to these books? One parent suggested that you might be breaking the law if you did try to limit access. I think they were referring to the PICO ruling. Board of Educations are not supposed to censor books based on ideas, but you can limit access or remove books that are inappropriate for students. And so we're not talking about book burning or book banning, but simply every library, every teacher, every Board of Education makes decisions about what books are going to be used and what books are appropriate. And choices have to be made. There's just not money or space to keep everything. So everyone has different ideas, but at least there's still a standard of common decency, I think, that we can all agree on. And so when a book that's assigned to students has pervasive profanity and vulgarity, has explicit sexual situations, when they so violate the standards of common decency that a student at the same school, according to the student handbook, if they use that language out in the hallway, they'd be suspended. And if there are portions of the book that can't even be read out loud in class, but the students have to read them silently at their desk, or where if I started reading that in this meeting, you'd shut me down, then we know that the line has been crossed, okay? And so what I'm asking you to do as board members is to take seriously the concerns of parents who want books limited or want certain books removed. And someone said, don't let the majority overrule the people who want these books. What does the majority want? Well, the majority has spoken. We elected you, all right? And we're asking you to use common sense and common decency and wisdom to make good decisions for our students. And if you agree with me that some sorts of materials need to be out of the schools, I ask you to help us with that. And on the other hand, if you think explicit and vulgar and profane materials need to be in the school, I ask you to state that and run on that. Make that part of your campaign so that we, the majority, can know how to vote. And
Heather Oldland.
Good evening. I'm a parent of 2 UCPS students. I'm here tonight to address the teacher shortage. The past 2 years have been difficult for all of us, for our students, and for our teachers and staff. I am proud of UCPS for being ranked #1 in the state. However, there is more work to do. It's obvious we are seeing teachers leaving at a higher rate. We know that teachers are the foundation of our schools and a valuable asset to our community. So how can we support our educators so they will want to stay here in UCPS? We can start by paying our teachers a higher wage. They are professionals and they should be treated and paid as professionals. We can listen to them and understand what the opportunities are and what the challenges are. They should have the resources they need so they can be successful educators for our students. We also need to put trust back into our teachers and bring back the positive praise we once had. At the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, we all came together with a powerful and positive message that our teachers are valued and supported. Unfortunately, that message has been fading. There is too much negativity coming from one side, like manufactured talking points around book banning, CRT, and even the disrespectful attacks calling teachers groomers. The worst of all, and I quote from a parent group's website, free from sexual abuse through over-sexualized teaching materials and books. These statements of sexual abuse and grooming do not help our educators feel valued, but rather makes them feel demoralized. Our students care, or our teachers care about our students. They put their heart and soul into this profession. They are under too much pressure and are leaving the educational field altogether. I can tell you firsthand what it's like when a teacher leaves. My child's class is now on their 3rd teacher this school year. No parent wants their child sitting at a cafeteria on a Chromebook with no instructional time. waiting for months for the student, or I'm sorry, for the school to find a replacement. No parent wants their child to be behind and unprepared for the EOGs. This will happen. This will continue to happen because there are no teachers waiting in the wings to come and rescue our schools. These are the true talking points that need to be addressed. Yes, UCPS is number one, but that rating was then, and a lot has happened this school year. Our school district needs to move forward by putting more funding into our schools, pay our educators a higher wage, provide more students or support for all students, and lastly, please respect our teachers so they will want to stay right here. Thank you.
Steve Martin.
Good evening. Tonight, I'd like to discuss the proposed revisions to Policy 5-1, which is the selection of instructional materials. This is the policy by which UCPS schools review and select supplemental materials to be available in each school's media center or in the classrooms. It is also the policy that allows parents to request an alternate assignment for their child if the parent finds the classroom assignment to be inappropriate or objectionable, and also allows members of the community to challenge a book or other material from being used in UCPS schools at all. The policy and curriculum committees have spent considerable time working on revisions to Policy 5-1, and your work has significantly improved the policy in many ways. However, as I emailed all of you on March 22nd, there are two changes to this that this board should make before adopting the changes to Policy 5-1. First, the revisions to Policy 5-1 make clear that the advisory committee at each UCPS school is the committee that reviews and selects supplemental materials, that committee must include parents, not just general community representatives. Further, the school media review committee at each school, which is the committee that considers and decides on challenges to books, must also include parents. These are both good and positive changes. However, there is a new provision in Part 2, Section A, that would bypass the school media review committee entirely, and the parental involvement that comes with them if a citizen challenges the same book in more than one school. In that situation, in the version of 5-1 before you tonight, that would cut parents and teachers out of this process entirely, and the review would take place with administrators and staff at the district level. The board should remove that language from Part 2, Section A, and stand up for parental involvement in the review process. The second change is this. Under Part 2, Section I, the final appeal of a challenged book or other material is to this board. At the school and district level reviews, Policy 5-1 requires every member of the review committee to read the book that is being challenged before the hearing and considering the challenge. But there is no such requirement for this board. That's wrong. If this board is going to decide that a challenged book should remain in the UCPS schools, whether it should be restricted to certain grade levels, or whether it should be banned from UCPS schools entirely, the least this board can do is actually read the book before making that decision. Don't just rely on summaries of the book or on cut and pasted excerpts. Read the actual book before considering the challenge. I hope that you will remove Policy 5-1 from the consent agenda tonight, and you will consider these changes before adopting it. Thank you.
Sandeep Patel. Dramatic Chambers. Kate Stanley. Jessica Wiggs. Hayden Martin. Okay, that concludes our public comments tonight. Board, that brings us to open session meeting minutes for March 1st. So moved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The consent agenda. So moved.
That's a question. I'm sorry. I know the last meeting that we had, we did in reference to a policy, Policy 5-1. I would, and I'm still learning how to do this motion stuff. All right. My question is there any way, as we did last meeting, Mr. Sides asked that it would go back to policy. Is there any way that we could approve the consent agenda with making 5-1 go back to policy committee for further review?
We've already approved the agenda.
Okay. Well, I do have a question about, am I able to ask the question about, okay, yes, ma'am. In reference to, because I know that we did discuss it prior, but I guess understanding more about it, and I'm on the policy committee, but it's still a lot of questions about it, and it was mentioned tonight. So with that being said, this policy entails that, and just correct me if I'm wrong, that parents, do they have insight on the approval of the material? Yes, okay. Okay.
Mrs. Morris, do you have any input on that?
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
In fact, when Mr. Sides pulled it, the change that he recommended was that it be parents, potentially plural. So at the school-based selection advisory committee and then review committee, there's parents on both those committees.
Gotcha. Previously, John, it was listed as, if I remember right, a parent from the site-based team. And my thought process was open it up a little bit, because the parent on the site-based team may not be called to serve on those committees as well. So kind of broaden the opportunity for parents to get involved. So we did, as Michelle just mentioned, we did it, broaden it to parents rather than the parent that's on the site-based team.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, I believe. Can we confirm that? A motion and a second.
You did have a motion and a second. I'm looking
Okay.
over at Donna just to make sure. Yeah, Mrs.
Okay.
May was the second.
Okay, with all those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, consent passes 9-1. I mean 9-0, excuse me. That brings us to Special Olympics. I will turn it over to Board Member Gary Sides.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One of the many, unfortunately, victims of COVID and the pandemic, particularly here in Union County, were the Special Olympics competition. And if you had an opportunity to attend or have a child that has participated in Special Olympics, it is a very special event. It entails not only school-age children, but also adults, our special adult population that choose to be involved. And I would like to propose to this board that UCPS take a move forward with assisting with the facilitation to facilitate revival of the Special Olympics. Now, I am not talking about any demands or requirements on UCPS staff. Special Olympics is a community-based effort. I've been in discussions with the North Carolina Special Olympics, and the organization, from the information that I've gleaned in discussions, it would entail a community coordinator, kind of an executive director, if you will, and a steering committee to handle various functions, organizing the day, finance, PR, various other functions involved in holding one of these events. And I would like to ask the board's support to be a part of this effort. And I will have discussions with the finance committee for any financial commitments that might be an option. But the funding for Special Olympics are through donations, grants, involvement in the community. And of course, it is open to any UCPS employee that feels called to be involved. But again, I want to reiterate, this is not, I am not proposing that UCPS take on responsibility for the organization and implementation of this event. I would merely like UCPS to have an opportunity to facilitate this, utilize UCPS facilities as appropriate, and I personally will volunteer at least for the initial chair of the steering committee and work to organize the community and various community organizations to be involved in this effort. So I would like to offer a motion for UCPS and this Board of Education to support the efforts to reorganize Special Olympics in Union County.
Second, I will volunteer as well. Reverend B.
I'll volunteer as well.
Me too. I'll volunteer too. I believe Reverend Benson, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, what will I've participated in facilitating Special Olympics before. One of the greatest days of my life. It was, I guess I'm not 15 anymore, so it was decades ago, but I still remember going out and watching them compete. And you really don't want to call them special because they go at it like they pros. But my esteemed colleague, what will UPS's participation look like? Will it be solely allowing the events to take place at various facilities, our fields, our stadiums, or what would it look like? Because things like this can go deep into the weeds, and so just so that the world watching, what would it look like? How do you see like a start to finish product with UCPS's involvement in that process?
I envision the formation of a steering committee and selection, which I understand there are some candidates the state level is working on, because all your volunteers have to be vetted, background checks, et cetera. But I envision a steering committee that will be divided up the various functions of having a successful event moving forward. I have not had any discussions with staff or the finance committee for any commitments, but I'm hoping that a small stipend would be an opportunity for the community coordinator as a part-time, not full-time staff, but part-time stipend for work that'd be involved. So that's the organizational structure. You have the actual facility, the organizing the day, and for our staff, just judging from the level of interest on our board, I'm sure there will be plenty of UCPS employees that will be interested in being involved. We have parents to be involved, other volunteer organizations in the county, because from your steering committee, then they will look for additional volunteers for specific functions from that steering committee. And then, of course, you need a strong volunteer base for the day of the actual event or events. It could even entail some of our students buddying with our special athletes to assist in training and getting them ready for their events. So there's an opportunity for student volunteers, community volunteers, UCPS volunteers. I will intend to approach other municipalities in our county to build our volunteer base. So I hope does that answer your question?
I have a question. Can we use our background? Matt, our background searches that we do for our volunteers and for our employees.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not that far into the process.
But that would
I
be good
believe
to
the
know,
Olympics
yeah.
has their own vetting
Okay.
process. I'm not there yet.
Mr. Sides, when are you looking to have this event?
Well, personally, the state championships will be held in the Matthews Mid-Hill area in November. My target, if we can organize the steering committee and move forward, would be to have an event this fall upon the return of students, get them back in school, get into training, hopefully in October. I know, and I think Dr. Houlihan's going to address in his comments some of the initiatives that our principals are taking this spring. And typically Special Olympics are held in the spring. So depending on the progress of the steering committee, if we have to have some other non-sanctioned games in the fall and actually look towards spring of 2023, that's what we'll do. My hope is we can organize a sanctioned Special Olympics this fall.
Second question, will we have a limit of participants?
I hope not.
Is it just for people inside the county?
I'm to be honest with you, I'm not sure, because I know there are some UCPS students that, because of a lack of a games here in the county, are participating in Mecklenburg County events, which are starting up this month. So I really couldn't tell you, Matt. I think they opened it to just about anybody who wants to apply for an event.
I think we may need to narrow it down to Union County Public School students.
Well, I'm not sure if you could do that, John, because the state organization has their governing bylaws and rules and regulations. And if you're going to be an official sanctioned Special Olympics, you have to do it the way they tell you to do it. They lay it out. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to find the bodies to put in, volunteer and the worker bees to pull it off.
So what you're saying is it will not be just a UCPS event. Because when I worked as a TA and we did Special Olympics with Wingate and we went to Weddington High School, it was just Union County Public School students.
That's what I was going to ask. What's the difference between what you're suggesting and what we've done in the past?
If I'm understanding the guidelines for Special Olympics, the application to apply to be an athlete is open to all that qualify, including special adults.
But
it's not just.
But UCPS held.
Right. I don't know
What's the
if we.
difference between, can anybody speak to staff? Can speak to the difference of what Mr. Sides is talking about and what we've been doing all the years that I've been here?
I don't know. I will be glad to find out and report back if we can limit participation to our students, or if a requirement of the organization is to be open to all of school age and older adults that have qualify and that have an interest in participation. I can't answer that question for you, but I will certainly find out.
So I'm a little unclear on what the motion is then. Like, what's the ask of the board?
Well, I'm also unclear as to what we've been doing for all these years. So every year we have a Special Olympics.
It is my understanding in the past, the county has an unpaid volunteer, not a county staff person, but a volunteer has, and I don't know how many years they did it and how many volunteers they've been through, but that person, whoever it was, ceased their involvement after the 2019 games and has not been able to participate. So it's the community leader is think of it like a superintendent or an executive director. And without that person in play, that's really the person where the rubber hits the road. So what I'm asking is for the support of this board to move forward with a Special Olympics. I will find out and report back to the board if it can, or if it is our desire to limit it to UCPS students only, or open it to all age groups that can participate and any qualifying athlete that chooses to participate, to utilize UCPS facilities, and to discuss with the administration any small financial contribution that may be a part of a fundraising effort. Does that answer your question, what I'm looking for?
Well, how about, I'll make this suggestion because you just had a lot of questions that need to be answered. So would it make sense to get those answers, get those questions answered, and then bring it back next month, and we can go from there to know, number one, are we just going to focus on Union County Public Schools? Because to make a motion tonight to go forth, and we don't have, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered from what you just checked off in your head.
But I also think that a lot of us want to do something.
Right, absolutely.
Well, frankly, I don't want to wait
Yeah,
another
absolutely.
month to begin to go out to the community to organize volunteers, to look who wants to play a part. Is it the pleasure of this board that if it is appropriate to limit it to UCPS students, at least this first go around, this fall, to limit it to UCPS qualifying students,
I'd feel
that would be
more.
most appropriate? Is that?
I'd feel a lot more comfortable if you actually struck the financial piece out of this. I think, I mean, without knowing what that is and already, always having challenges with the budget, I hate to kind of give you a endorsed check, right? Not knowing what that is. So mainly,
I'll table that part of it for the time being.
Okay.
And
then come
to the
with
point where there's
request at some
more
point,
concrete
somebody to raise.
discussions with staff, what is and is not possible,
Right.
and report back. If I could just get a commitment to move forward, if it is not possible to limit to UCPS students to participate, then I will be back to this board we'll reconsider where we go from there. Does that work? Because I want to get started on lining up volunteers. I think that's the piece we need to move on. So we want to have it in some shape or form. It's just, from what I'm hearing from this board, the scope to at least this first year limit or encourage UCPS student participation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, not for me, because I mean, if you're going to have it, like I said, I did Special Olympics before. If you're going to have it, have it. But at the same time, I think I would just offer a friendly amendment, and that is adding to the motion that you get additional information before moving even further. I think you're right. If you're going to get it started, you need to go ahead and start. But at the same time, nothing so concrete that puts us in a situation to where. So I want to move forward, but I want Reverend Kirkpatrick's and the rest of our questions answered prior to any additional movement.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Really,
is
all we're
the-
looking at is a facility use when it comes down to
I
it.
think
That's all we
I
really
think
need.
our
At this
involvement,
point.
right? Our interest, and then also the facility
No,
use, right? Is that what you're asking
Well, I mean,
for?
we could give
Right.
facility use and then-
And so what I'm hearing, the question is, can we limit it to, do we want to limit it to UCPS students, at least for the first one, and then we, whatever can decide moving forward. But is that the question that if we can't limit it to UCPS, we need to revisit?
Not
But
for
if we
me.
can,
I mean, I'm open to have Union County residents.
I'm open to Union County residents.
Same.
that, you're saying the same thing too? You want to open it to
If we're
residents?
going to have it, let's have it.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
So is the idea that then there would not ever be a spring Special Olympics? I mean, is this replacing the spring or is it an additional event?
I call it an additional initial event.
We typically have I need staff. Do we do Special Olympics in the spring? It's been a couple years because of COVID, so I apologize for not remembering when it does.
Yes, the answer is historically, it's always been a spring event.
So do we plan on having a spring event in a year? Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr. Breedlove.
Dr. Breedlove.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Current, Dr. Houlihan, are you speaking on the events that are coming up this, in the,
My question is, are we going to have spring Special
2023?
Olympics in the spring of next year, like we typically did?
That is the
before COVID?
plan, yes, ma'am.
And is that just UCPS students or is it the county?
It's the county.
It
It's
is the
not
county.
just UCPS. It's open to all of Union County.
Okay.
Are you referring to what the principals are attempting to organize?
No, this is our traditional prior to COVID spring games, where the events, some of the events are, and I'm not the expert, all right, on this, but some of the events are Special Olympics, I guess, qualified events, but others are spring game events that are not sort of sanctioned in all that. It's a way for us to celebrate our Special Olympic athletes at our school and give them a chance to be outside, make this a community event, and celebrate success.
I think the question on the table, one of the questions would be, if we're going to have a sanctioned Special Olympics event in the fall, would we also need to have another one in the spring? And I think that would be the ask, is that if Mr. Sides' motion is to,
Or vice versa, do we need one in the fall if we're going to have one in the spring,
correct,
but a fully sanctioned Special Olympics event that either we decide it's open to the county or not?
I know that you're disappointed that we didn't have one this spring, and it's been a couple years. And I know you're, Mr. Sides, that you wanted to put something together for the fall. But if the system is willing to do it in the spring, should we have both, the fall and the spring, or the other? I don't know what the answer is.
I think the confusion is because the state Special Olympics is in November, and that's what has kind of thrown a kink in traditionally having a spring Special Olympics. I'm kind of curious, does the state always have their state Special Olympics in the fall, or why are they doing this?
I think they do it in the fall because you can have the local events in the spring. The students that qualify or have an interest can then train through the summer and participate in the fall. So they have something in the spring and the fall.
So the spring is the qualifying for the fall. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess the question becomes, are we going to take the anticipated spring games in 2023 and make it a fully sanctioned Special Olympics open to the county, all qualifying athletes in the county? Is that what I'm hearing now? Is that
that would give
where we're
enough
going?
time for preparation?
Spring.
Yeah.
In the
next
spring,
That
of
would give enough time.
2023.
Yeah, I like that.
Is that good with you, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
For all Union County Public School residents or Union, right? And I think that was one of my questions, just making sure that if we open it up, that we don't have everybody from around the state coming. So I guess just I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
and I guess my question for Dr. Breedlove is, when we say that we plan to have a spring games, is that planned to be a sanctioned game and contingent upon the state filling the volunteer position to help coordinate that, or a unsanctioned game where it's a celebration of our athletes of the county, but maybe not a qualifying event?
Traditionally, it's been the latter that I'm aware of. I don't know all the ins and outs of making it a sanctioned games for all of those events that would qualify students for the state Special Olympics. And I don't know how that process works. So we, staff would have to we would have to figure out, what that would take in order to do that.
But I think what I
I'm
hear you
unaware.
saying is the system intends to host a Special Olympics in the spring of 23 in some capacity.
We don't know. It's not a fully qualified Special Olympics, if that's what I'm hearing. It's something
I'm
we put
not
together.
sure about that. I would have to find out if it is. Typically, it has been what we call spring games, and it is with Special Olympics in support. Remember, we are the county runs the Special Olympics, and we support that venture with a site, usually at a school, and then we also have volunteers, students, teachers from across the district. We bring out all the schools, including Union Academy, including students or athletes that are no longer students, but still qualified to be there. And we've traditionally called it spring games, but I don't know all of the events and what they would qualify a student for, and we would have to research that. Because I believe there's like gymnastics, there's other events that we don't do.
Did we do this last year?
No.
Okay.
There are lots of other events in a Special Olympics that we don't do in our spring games.
And Madam Chair, these are just some of the questions that can be ironed out. And by having it in the spring, we have time to iron all these things out.
Well, I thought I had, I'm going to withdraw this motion. The spring games issue, other than what had been discussed about the principals doing for this year, is new to me. And I don't know how it's being organized. We don't know if that involves Special Olympics. This may even be a redundant effort from what I'm hearing. So I withdraw my motion.
I appreciate your heart for the Special Olympics, Mr. Seitz, and I know where we're going. We just need to decide what we're going to do based upon what our spring Special Olympics looks like.
I do want to say to the board, as Mr. Sides alluded to it, we are excited this month that across all of our comprehensive high schools, we will be hosting elementary and secondary opportunities for our EC children and students to come to their feeder high school. I don't know the dates yet, but we'll be communicating that to the board and to the public. But it will be this month where we can not have a traditional Special Olympics activity at one location, but to have an opportunity for some field day activities and other kinds of physical fitness activities and games for our EC kids in lieu of a planned Special Olympics official games. And we're very excited to be hosting that across our comprehensive high schools.
And that's this spring.
That is this month. Yes, sir.
This month.
And Madam Chair, I still would like to move. I still would like to move forward with research on what it would take to get a sanctioned Special Olympics. I think that would be a great thing. We just need to know all the ins and outs. So if staff could do that, that would help us greatly.
Well, and on top of that, who on staff or what positions on staff have organized these games, not this spring, but the one you're speaking of in 2023, who has been responsible for putting that together in the past?
Typically, that has been run out of our Exceptional Children's Department.
Yeah. Well, if it's Special Olympics, if you're going to do a sanctioned Special Olympics, it's going to have to be a community event. In other words, EC department is not going to have to be, or get to be, whichever way you want to look at it, responsible. It's a community-based effort. So that's a little bit, that's kind of the difference we're talking here. We want to go Special Olympics, or do we want to keep it an in-house UCPS spring event run by the EC department for Union County students, special students? So that kind of sounds like that's the question of where we want to go with this.
And that's what they're
is
going to
that fair?
find. That's what they're going to find out, Gary. What it would take
So-
to get us.
I can give you the contact at the North Carolina Special Olympics that I've been talking with. My vision was a community event, not the responsibility of our EC staff.
And I think,
Okay.
Mr. Sides,
That's-
and we support that intent and that vision. I think the question is between now and whatever date, can we do some research? And if we want to come back to the board and say, if we want to have a sanctioned event that's a community led, and we do not believe we have the ability for staff to pull that off for whatever reason, then I think it opens the conversation back up. If it's going to be an unsanctioned event where for the spring,
right,
that might be a different conversation. So I would
Right.
like to ask that Dr. Breedlove and team do some research on this topic and come back perhaps, and I'll look to the chair for a possibility, a committee this month that can then report back to the board in May, if that works. Because I think the intent is to do what you're advocating for.
So one recommendation is to bring this, get some of these basic answers, sanctioned, unsanctioned, bring it to curriculum. And then we can discuss it in curriculum and then bring a recommendation or next steps to the May meeting.
We'll be glad to do that. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to provide you with the contact that I've been talking with at North Carolina Special Olympics. I'm going to lay it in your hands. What the requirements are, can we make it if I'm understanding this correctly, can we make it a sanctioned Special Olympics, but limit it to UCPS? If it is a Special Olympics, that takes it, is it required to? That's, I mean, what I would think is takes it out of the organizational responsibility of our EC department and make it a community-based effort. And then you can find out the guidelines and come back. How does that,
Yes, sir.
I think that's the best way to work it.
We will proceed.
I'll send you an email in the morning with the contact
Okay.
at well, they're actually in Morrisville. They're not in Raleigh. That you can get the clarification.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Breedlove. Okay, so we'll take that to curriculum and then we'll have another discussion in May. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Dr. Houlihan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last Friday was an amazing day for Union County Public Schools. After a 2-year absence from our in-person literacy celebration, more than 1,000 elementary students filled Cuddy Arena at Wingate University for books and brackets. Congratulations to Unionville Elementary School, this year's champion, and a big shout out to our runners up East, Sandy Ridge, and Indian Trail Elementary. I was completely blown away by the excitement, the cheering. It was awesome.
And
This month,
may I say that the superintendent danced?
well, the superintendent tried to dance. I don't know if there's a video of evidence of that. Superintendent also tried to shoot basketball, so there's that. This month, we are celebrating 2 very important employee groups. This week is National Assistant Principals Week, and this month is National School Library Month. Each of our assistant principals brings a very special skill set and talent to their jobs, and we want to say how much we appreciate you. Your job is very important to the success of our schools. Thank you for your dedication to Team UCPS. I also want to say thank you to our media coordinators for their hard work and commitment. We appreciate all that you do each and every day. It's also that time of year again to gear up for our summer mobile book bus display. We are ready to begin collecting gently used and new books for our book bus. We will begin collecting books this Friday, and the drive will end April 29th. Bins will be located at our Church Street Central Office location, Huntington Learning Center in Wesley Chapel, Cuthbertson High School, Porter Ridge Middle School, Parkwood High School, and Sun Valley Middle. The book bus will start serving students on June 13th, and we will post that schedule on the UCPS website. And finally, we will hold a teacher career fair on April 30th from 9 to noon at Weddington High School. Principals, school administrators, and human resource staff will be present to speak to candidates about positions, licensure, etc. We are asking candidates to pre-register via the UCPS website, and we look forward to welcoming interested candidates and to hiring new talent for Team UCPS. Board members, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have the superintendent's budget proposal, and I will turn it over to Sean McLam.
I'll actually kick this off. Before Ms. McLam presents, I'd like to kind of frame our presentation for you all. This evening, we are pleased to present the fiscal year 23 budget proposal for your review. Since January, we have received feedback from multiple stakeholder groups, including students, teachers, parents, principals, and other employee categories, as well as the Finance Committee. Similar to prior years, the budget proposal is broken down into 4 main priorities: sustaining operations, investing in our employees, program expansion, and new initiatives. The proposal you will hear tonight paints a true picture of the identified needs of the district. Moving towards post-pandemic and recovery of academic learning loss, UCPS is committed to ensuring our students and staff have the resources they need to be successful. We must also remain competitive when it comes to compensation, benefits, and other employee recruitment and retention strategies. Finally, as the highest performing district in the state that places a high importance on educating the whole child, we are also committed to maintaining a high level of academic and non-academic success. The ability to sustain such high performance requires the allocation of adequate funding at the federal, state, and local level. I am highly confident that the priorities presented this evening, if funded appropriately and fully, will continue to support our efforts to continuously improve and sustain high performance. I want to thank Ms. McLam, our Chief Financial Officer, and your staff, as well as members of our cabinet team, the Board Finance Committee, and the many stakeholders who provided feedback. I will now turn it over to Ms. McLam for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was a great introduction. You did a great job there. Dr. Houlihan went through a lot of what we'll cover here. We'll go through the budget development process, his priorities, the district funding, statistical information, our proposed operating request, as well as our capital request, and then I'll summarize when we get to the end. So just to give you all a visual representation of what Dr. Houlihan just explained with our stakeholder input and the process that we've gone through in developing the budget and getting all the input from anyone who has, some interest in education in Union County and helping us to improve. We begin this process in January, and hopefully by June, we'll have some idea of what all of our funding allocations will be. So as Dr. Houlihan mentioned, sustaining operations, investing in employees and program expansions, investing in our future, those are always the priorities that we look to when we start developing the budget. This year focused on facilities and technology, increases in operational supplies, and some of our operational increases that we know just with market fluctuations we're going to need to address. We've also always got to take into account any increases we have in local funding, the proportionate share for our charter school enrollment. Investing in employees, state salary and benefit rates are at least a known at this point this year. They are subject to change, so we're using the biennium budget to determine what our local impact will be using the rates that were included for the FY23 year. Supplements for our assistant principals is something that we would like to also visit. We've also included the compensation market adjustments for a couple of the categories that we began when we first started our market compensation adjustment several years ago, and then recruiting and retention strategies. Middle school athletic program and some coaching stipends are also a top priority for us this year. Bringing that middle school athletic program in-house is something that we want to focus on for the coming year. And then our CIP and technology needs for our district laptop leases and other district network equipment. And then the co-curricular annual CIP inclusion for our band uniforms, which is Cuthbertson High School this year. So some statistical information just to give you some visual representation of how our local allocations are distributed. We have over 50% dedicated to instruction. Local funds are normally intended for the operations of the district. So, as you can see, we focus a lot of our attention on instruction. Salary and benefits is right at 68% of our local funding, which always human capital is the biggest cost to any school district. State, local, federal dollars, along with capital funds. This is something that I have brought to you all before, just so you can see a stacked how our funding has not increased as greatly in percentages as a lot of our costs have increased over the last 5 to 10 years. Retirement contributions are a big jump. The 10-year increase, as you can see, the increase year over year, and the matching benefits that are required on any full-time salary payments that we make. The average over this time period is over 5%. The same is true, but not quite as high with our employer hospital insurance premiums. There's been quite a few years that have had some significant jumps. Our charter school enrollment and projections for next year, DPI is projecting our enrollment to be 40,448 next year, and charter school enrollment we're projecting at 4145. So the proportionate share is what we allocate to those students based on our per pupil allocations. So our proposed operating budget, you'll see here there's a remaining increase for the supplement, the teacher supplements and other supplements that we funded last year and were approved. The county funded those as of January. We received half the funding. When we met with them, they indicated we needed to include this as part of our allocation and the funding request that we sent to them this year.
So when the county last year said that they would give us half of it last year, they indicated that they would give us the rest for this year. So last year they said we'll give you half, so it would be 500 for each teacher supplement to increase the teacher supplement. And then this year they would give us the other half of the 500, so it would be the 1,000. Have they indicated that is what's going to happen?
What the county staff communicated to Dr. Houlihan and to me when we met with them is that needed to be included in our request, and any proposed increase that the county is projecting for us, that dollar amount would come off of that.
That is not what they said last year at all.
And can I add to that? Do you know, did the county manager or county staff, were any of the elected officials, the county commissioners, the county commission chairman, were they present at this meeting, or was it staff only?
Not to my knowledge. It was a staff-to-staff meeting that we usually, when it comes budget season, Dr. Houlihan and I have regular meetings with them just to sort of talk through budget projections, ask questions. That was the first meeting we've had to discuss the FY23 budget.
Did the county staff indicate that their comments as far as funding this that Ms. Heintel asked about, that had the approval of the county commissioners? They were in agreement that was the way this would be handled? Or is that county staff indicating their thoughts that, the people that actually vote on it might have a different opinion?
Well, just like Dr. Houlihan presents a budget to you all as the Board of Education, the county manager does the same to the Board of County Commissioners. Once it becomes their budget, they can make adjustments. His budget request, the way I understand, is going to be a zero tax increase budget request. So it's 3.5% across the board for all departments, and all funding that the county provides was the percentage proposal that he was going to submit to the BOCC.
So it was never talked about that we'd have to use. So what's the amount so it's 3.5% increase over last year, which is how much money?
Okay, so
sorry to push
we
you
can
ahead.
go to the summary
jumping
screen.
ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
'cause I have some questions.
So combined, the increase from last year is 3.9 million, which is 3.5% on operating, and 647,000 for capital. That's a total of $4.5 million. The overall request, including the changes that we've included, is $12.4 million just on the operating budget.
So we have to take out $2 million from the top just to get to the point where they told us that That is not the conversations that we had last year. It was that they were going to give us the money for half of it last year in our current budget, and then next year they would add it to this budget so that we would be able to do the 1,000 to the teachers.
And I will say, last year, the
And-
projected increase was 3.5 million, and we received 5.5 million. So I would,
How's that going down?
I would say that what your statement would
Yeah.
be more accurate in that they were adding to our projected
Yes.
increase.
Yes, to be able
fund
to do that.
Yes.
And
to
we
fund
had
that.
a lot of conversations last year with the county about salaries and hourly rates for our employees and how we're behind. And they were all about us getting them information, because right now we're still losing employees to the county because the county pays more than we do for the same employees. And that's not okay. We're supposed to, and we have two the facilities department needs wages
addressed, right,
increased,
yes.
and so does the TAs. And that's all stuff we've talked about.
Why can't we be on par with the county?
It's a great question.
I'm sorry, this may make sense, so that's why it doesn't happen. But if we've got the same employee skill set the county needs, we need, why can't there be an agreement that this is going to be through county funding, which includes us because we are at the behest of the county funding for these items, all be on the same page? I'm asking you rhetorically. I don't expect you to answer, but think about it.
Other things that we have for, you talked a little bit about middle school sports. We're the only district in North Carolina that doesn't have middle school sports underneath this district's umbrella. And I think it's just something that we need to do, and we've talked about it for years now. And I think that we're kind of behind the 8 ball to get it done.
And it's an equity issue.
It is.
Some of our middle schools, they're at a disadvantage from being able to fund their athletic associations. And transportation is an issue. You've got parents working or single parent working. They can't afford to take time off to take Johnny to his cross-country meet or his baseball game. And plus, when you have, the more students you can get involved in athletic activities, that keeps them off the streets and gives them an incentive to do their schoolwork so that they can participate in sports. We've had feedback specifically from 2 of our Title I middle school principals, and they feel that it will have an impact on their student performance and the well-being of their students to have a viable and vibrant athletic program. And for these schools, the only way it's going to happen is if we step in from a financial standpoint. Now, we're not talking about taking them over. We're talking about leveling the playing field from a finance standpoint, correct? That's
right. There, we do have a 3-year phased-in plan to bring those sports and what sports we bring in first, the capital investment that we'll need, and those kind of things, just to start that program.
And not to deviate, but we do plan at the work session next week to have Mr. Nelson Gardner, our athletic director, give a presentation to the board about what that 3-year proposal would be.
Yep.
100% agree. And I want to go back to what Ms. Heintel said about staying competitive. You heard me say in my opening comments, this budget proposal helps us stay competitive, mostly in surrounding counties and states when it comes to compensation for our employees, but equally competitive with our own county. And I think that's a bigger issue that we need to work through, because that playing field should be leveled, in my opinion. So I'd like to ask Ms. McLam to get back to section 2 and kind of walk the board through the rest of the proposal.
It's okay.
Very good.
Okay. So, of course, we've got increases that we've projected for local salaries for our benefits. There's certified step increases of an average of 2.5% on the state budget for any certified staff that would be on a state salary schedule. It may not be 2.5 for everyone, but that's the average. We've also included, especially in some strategic and key areas in our facilities department, the skilled trades. There are some that, if you'll recall, they were part of the market study in 2018. They were the first group that we addressed. We did the TAs in 2019. So they're both two categories with the state funding and the state budget requirements of minimum hourly rates. That has impacted our need as well to go back and revisit several of these categories. Again, the assistant principals, it's been since 2014 since we addressed a local supplement for or any increases on our assistant principal pay. And then,
I'm sorry, did you say 2014
yes, sir.
for assistant principals who probably have the hardest job in the whole UCPS, other than the finance department, of course. But I mean, that is, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. That's a tough deal.
I've never been an AP, but
Well,
I would say it's. I would
shouldn't
say
look
yes.
at you when I say
Yes.
something.
We also have evaluated on the state salary schedule on steps 15 to 24 and then 25 plus. There basically are no increases on that scale for that time period. So we've looked at addressing and adding an additional 2.5% to our staff that are in that category. Right now, before retirements or any of that, we have about 1,300 employees in that category. So we do have a very experienced staff that we want to try to retain, and that's one of the retention efforts that we are proposing. Plus, we've looked at national board accreditation and funding. New teachers that want to get their accreditation, plus the renewals of accreditation. And one of the key points about national board credentialing, with a very minimal cost to the district, once an employee obtains their national board certification, they get a 12% increase on the state salary schedule. So that's a way for them to get an increase without us having to fund that full initiative.
And isn't the cost for the process about $2,000?
It's about
For a new
15.
app-
It's about $1,500 for a new
1,500?
applicant, and it's
What's a
$500 for the renewals.
Renewal, okay. So if you're a relatively newer teacher or a single teacher without a spouse's support, that's a pretty significant hit, $1,500.
Right.
Not to mention the time involvement, but I'm just talking about, I don't want the money. I would hope that we could make it so that the financial aspect of it is not an impediment to someone
And that would-
wanting to pursue that avenue.
Right. That is the purpose of doing something similar to this. So we would have a process to identify who those people would be each year and be able to give them those opportunities. Again, we have to address our enrollment, and any growth in our funding increases the per pupil calculations that go to charter schools. The first year of our 3-year implementation for our middle school athletic program, as well as some additional coaching stipends in some of our growing events in indoor track and cross country.
And let me, go ahead.
In the middle school athletic program is the only increase to our staff for next year. Is there any other increased
Additional positions?
Yes.
No.
other than the middle school athletic?
Right, there's an
program?
assistant director included with the expansion of the 3-year implementation, an assistant athletic director at the district level.
Could that not be a teacher at the school already? Doesn't have to be, I mean, it might be a
There
position,
will
but it may
be
not be a
school-
body.
There will be school level ADs, but then there will need to be someone similar to Nelson who can help him manage both middle and high school.
But I mean, couldn't that be the PE teacher who's already employed and adds that duty to his or her responsibilities? It's a new.
This is a new position.
All right, okay.
There's middle school ADs at each middle school. Yeah.
So overall,
And then, Ms. McGlynn,
Oh,
let me
I'm
just
sorry.
say, I am happy for that item where it says increase for cross-country coaches. As a cross-country coach, that made me very happy.
Well, and the details on that really is more about expanding instead of there being one coach that does all of that. They need a men's coach, a women's coach, and an assistant coach because the supervision of the number of people now participating in those event or that program has definitely grown.
There's no doubt it's
Popular.
rough having all the kids.
Yes.
So thank you
Yes.
for that.
So if you'll look, I have put two different columns. The required mandatory increases is 4.6 million, which includes that 2 million that we discussed for our supplements from last year, and 7.8 million for additional needs. That difference in what we discussed on the 3.9 million projected increase of 3.5% is about 745,000 that we would still be shy of covering the mandatory increases.
Well, say that one more time.
The total mandated stuff is
The
4.64
Yes.
million, and we're getting 3.9 million from the county, so we're short 7.
Okay, so from what you were told,
Just for
meeting from
mandated
staff,
stuff.
yep, meeting with county staff, from what you were told, the increase would be, and our increase in mandates, that's not optional stuff, that's mandates, we'd already be in the hole.
Yes.
That's a true statement, okay?
Yes.
I want everybody,
Well, and
everybody
not
out
only
there to
that,
understand.
is if the $2 million for the rest of the teacher supplements, we would have money to do the other things that we need to do, the teacher assistants and the facilities and all the other things that we have on this list, and including the middle school sports.
You would have a few other options. Yes.
Correct. Thank you.
So if you all are ready, I'm going to move on to the capital. So the capital budget, the CIP has identified, we've got $19.4 million in identified capital needs. Again, our teacher laptops are up for renewal and the lease has expired. So we're currently in the process of identifying who that new lease will be with. Mr. Parker is doing the RFP and going through and evaluating the devices. So this may have to fluctuate a little bit, just depending on the current market and what the cost on this lease for the teacher and admin units might, if there is any. Plus, there is some equipment included for disaster recovery and school network. And then there's the co-curricular band for Cuthbertson High School of $50,000. So that's a total of $23 million for our capital request.
Are we getting any true-up funds this year?
No. The true-up funding, once they moved away from a bifurcated tax rate, there no
Meaning that
longer is.
we used to have our own tax rate.
Right. We used to be listed on the tax bills. They would project a collection rate, and they would fund their departments as well as us based on that projected collection rate. When they collected in excess of that, then we were to receive those as true-up funds. So now they're funding the needs as needed. There is no more of that.
So last
true-up.
year, they got rid of the bifurcated tax.
I believe so, and
yes,
I'll have to look back to see, because we did not receive true-up funds for the 2021 year. The true-up funds we received were for the 20 year.
20 year. Okay.
So we received them in 2021, but they were for the FY20 collection.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we have not received the true ups for 2021.
Right. Because there was not a, that rate was not listed. They did not do it the same way for the 2021 tax year.
Let me just make sure for everybody, especially those that may be watching that don't get into the weeds on budget. Previous to this current fiscal year, which started last July 1, 2021, the county set a tax rate, a cent rate.
Right.
And it was basically, it could be the revenues could fluctuate depending on how much they collected, sales tax, and property tax collections. They could conceivably do a better job collecting more sales tax revenues than projected, which they would share because of a tax rate. So we would get our rate on every extra dollar they corrected. So for this fiscal year, starting July 1st, 2021, they went to a fixed budget. They said, you get X. And it doesn't matter if we collect X plus Y, you're just getting X. Has the county staff, or anybody for that matter, ever been given an explanation why, after I don't know how many years in the county doing budgeting that way, why they changed? Why? What is the advantage to change to a budget format such as this?
It would allow them to fund us based on their current revenue and projections and based on the needs we had. We wouldn't necessarily be locked into a certain rate. That would be the benefit to us.
If
Not
they
having-
funded us where we needed at our request.
Right.
If they didn't, and the county had a good year because of the economy, going in the right direction we want, then we would have in arrears. They used to fold it into next year's budget.
Capital.
Yeah, so it'd be a while before we get our it'd be applied, but still we would share in the good times. Now we got our allowance and that's all we get, right?
Well, it's really more about the rate that was on the tax bill.
Yes.
They project you're never going to collect 100% of
Right.
what's on that tax bill. So
Right.
they project a collection rate
Right.
only for your property taxes.
Right.
And when they collected over that, your portion of that is what was the true up.
Right.
Okay, so without that on the tax bill,
Right.
then you aren't necessarily only receiving the penny value that was assigned to you on the tax bill. So when you submit your request, or based on their revenue projections and the same probably process, but it's distributed and not assigned to you on your penny value, there's a percent increase that they allocate to every department or the school district, however they build their budget. If they build it with a 0 increase to the tax rate, then that's what we received was the 3.5%.
Then the question comes down to how do they use their collection?
Right, because you're well, and you're talking about sales tax, and sales tax is unpredictable, and that's not something that they would use to fund recurring type expenditures with. Property tax is more it's a set, you pretty well know, so those are going to be your recurring. Yes. Okay.
Well, I would just personally like to have an explanation of why the change.
I can definitely.
I don't think that's.
I know there's been some discussion. I think that might be something that if we are able to schedule a joint meeting would be a good topic for us to discuss. So we kind of reviewed the summary early on just for demonstration purposes. Our current operating budget's a little over 111 million. Our net request for our true needs is 12.4, which makes $124 million local operating request. Our current $18 million for our capital, 4.8 is the requested increase, which is 23 million. That brings our total ask this year to 147 million. As we discussed earlier, 4.5 is the projected 3% increase on each one of those categories that we received from the county, which would put us at a total of 134 million. Using both of those with the net change, we still have another 12.7 million in needs that would not be addressed with that 3.5% increase. This is something that we've started, a few years ago. I started providing this information so you could see year over year a stacked bar for our local and capital funds together. There are some other, we've gotten a lot of questions about our ESSER funds and other identified needs. We have assigned some ESSER dollars to address learning loss and some reading specialist positions, some positions that are really temporary staffing needs. I think there's a lot of misconception about what ESSER dollars can be used for in a school district. They are not free to be used for anything that, whatever our needs are. We're very limited in what we can use our dollars for, and we have to make sure that what we do use it is within the limits and eligibility of the funding source. There is some need for based on letters training, some classroom resources. This is about $3,500 per class in elementary school to provide classroom libraries and other resources they're going to need to implement the science of reading.
Dr. Houlihan, could you just expound a little bit about letters for folks that may not be what that is?
So the state of North Carolina has made it a requirement of all districts in the state to have elementary based teachers. I believe Dr. Breedlove in grades K or pre-K through, is it through fifth?
Yeah, it's
through
all,
fifth, to go through a pretty significant amount of hours of professional development that's called letters. The vendor, I believe, is the name of Voyager Sopris. This is all based on the state's initiative to increase reading proficiency rates across all school systems and to provide teachers with training on what is called the sciences of reading. This is a 2-year effort. We are in year 1. As we typically do, we are leading the way in terms of we're in the first cohort of districts receiving this training, but it is a 2-year commitment on behalf of the district. The only part that is funded per se by the state is the actual professional development. Any implementation materials and resources is left up to the district to determine how they want to provide those resources to the teachers to implement what they have actually learned in the classroom.
Yes. So there will be the commitment from the state is only for the first round of training. Any new hires or sustainability is going to be the responsibility of the district. So there is some funding allocated for us to try to implement that and see what it's going to take for us on an annual basis. Some high priority attendance payments that we've included as well, just for discussion. So we've got $11.8 million allocated out of our ESSER funds to address some of these additional needs. Some of the one-time operational items that we have identified, one is the computer refresh for our school nutrition department. They've pieced together laptops and computers over the years. They're out of compliance right now, and really for our network security, we need to bring all those up to date. Plus our technology fees, uncollected technology fees in our schools has become more and more of a concern, and we need to make sure we can maintain the repairs and the spares in our schools. So we really need to try to do something to address that. Funding also to support the athletic implementation in middle school athletics, some of the one-time expenses for facilities and equipment, washers and dryers, and some of the things that are going to be needed just to get that program started. So one-time funds are a perfect way to do that. And that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. McLean.
Thank you.
If you all have something I could also discuss, one of the things you will not see in the budget, there's been a lot of discussion about the after-school program. So I just wanted to, you don't see any line items in here regarding after-school, and just kind of wanted to go over a few things with you all about the program, the increase in the fees. Right now, just for general information. The after-school program is a fee-based service. So it's a fee for service, and we call those enterprise accounts. So the fees you charge should cover the cost to run the program. When we ended in the pandemic and had to close the program down, we made some strategic decisions about what staff to keep, what staff we looked at what was best for the employees with all the benefits that were out there. So we made strategic decisions so that we could bring the program back when we were able to come back face to face. We kept the site coordinators on staff so that we had their experience to help us get the program off the ground. When the pandemic allowed us to come back, we started the program back, but we were only able to staff 12 sites. We started with 27 sites. When you start looking across the district at what it costs to run a program like that, the more sites you have, the more you have to distribute some of your general expenses, okay, that your management expenses, central expenses. So 12 sites, we're going to see if we can get everything going back again. So we start back with 12 sites and we've not been able to expand. And part of that reason is because of staffing. We've increased the pay, trying to attract and retain. We're trying to do a few incentives to try to bring staff back, because the more groups you have at each site, 40 is your break point. 40, you need at least 40 students in a site and a steady increase every year to be able to cover the expenses for that site. A lot of our sites are hovering in that like maybe 60 range probably, and really finding, again, enough group leaders to expand the number of students, because I'm sure there's more that would like to participate. So the first year we had to, I came to you all, we had to transfer over $630,000 to the after school program. That is not normal. That program has never had local dollars put into it because it is self-sufficient. It's always been able to maintain. This year, we are projecting out and looking at where we may end the year, and it appears we're probably going to be in the $400,000 to $450,000 range again, that I'll be coming to you all that we'll need to transfer to that program just to break even. So I say all that to say that, while we've tried to keep costs low as we can for parents for many years, and we were really hoping that the program would be able to pick back up, but due to staffing shortages, we've just not been able to get there. So we had to make a decision about what the true cost was for the program. We're not in a profit. We're not here to make a profit. We're here to provide a service to our parents and our staff, and do it in the most reasonable way we can. So, I just wanted to give you all a little bit of insight into why we had to do that, what we've gone through. We've evaluated some of the other programs that surround us. Some, not every district has a program, and just what the rate would be, it needed to be. And we were right in line with where we're going to have to be to just cover costs. So just wanted to give you a little bit of background and a little additional information just to help answer a lot of the questions I think that have come from that rate increase.
So Shauna, thank you very much for that explanation. So right now, we are close to $500,000 in the red for this year.
I'm projecting out that we will be somewhere in the probably.
And last year, we were $630,000 in the red.
Yes.
But at that time, we did have some savings, or no, where did we transfer that from?
That came straight from our local fund balance.
Local fund balance. So we're running 12 sites at the current rate, and we're approximately $450,000 in the red. Do you anticipate having to reduce again? Because pre-COVID, we had 27 sites, and that free enterprise was self-funding itself. So now we're down to 12 sites, and we're still in the red. Do you anticipate having to drop to 10 sites, 8 sites. Where have you thought about when you're running the numbers so that the after-school program is not $450,000 in the red? I assume that's where you got the new rates from, but do you anticipate having to reduce the number of sites again next year?
At this point, as long as we can maintain staffing, I don't see the need in making any, I'm hoping that maybe we're going to get to a point where we might be able to expand at least at the sites we have, and potentially if we can grow at all. You know, it would be nice, but again, it's about staffing. We have to keep our ratios. We're 5-star rated. We've applied for some grants, and I know a lot of people, again, talk about ESSER dollars and how much have we put into the after-school program. We don't get funds that are eligible for after-school program. We're here to do learning loss and things for the instructional day. While the after-school program is very important, we have applied for some grants, but we're still awaiting whether or not we will receive any funds to help offset some of this. If we do, we will definitely come back and we will talk about what impact that has, but it's per site. So we're providing those documents, and those grant applications are based on a per site, not on the districts.
Is there any headwind you might see for a positive turnaround? Is there any possibility of a nice headwind coming to help offset some of these costs? That's question one. And question two is, those increases, were they the most minimal to try to get the best bang for the buck?
Yes, we in the increases, again, were as low as we could go and still feel like we were going to be able to break even with all the potential increases as we have discussed in benefits and other things. Not all of our staff are full-time, but we do have full-time staff, plus the potential of any rate increases that for hourly wages. Right now, they're not.
Go ahead. Sorry. Finish.
Right now they're at 13, and we've got to have that discussion about if they are required to increase to the 15 minimum that was in the state budget.
Okay, so this school year, we have 12 sites, correct?
Yes.
And what you're saying is that our loss will be 400 to 450,000. So that's telling us that we have to increase our cost to the parents and yes, because of that. So over 2 years, we've had to put more than $1 million into the after-school program.
And I will say that there are some other, the facility that they're using and some of those things, they have historically been able to provide to the district an offset for the use of our facility, the power, the water, and all of that. They are no longer able to do that. That's about $500,000 a year that they were able to reimburse for the 27 sites that they had, the phone, everything that they do. So while it appears the district is not, maybe looks, there is still district support in the way of funding in that manner.
May I ask you this question? How many staff members do you need per site?
It depends on how many students you
Okay.
have. Right now, if you're under the 8, like if you're 5 years old, they can only have a 1-to-14 ratio. 6 to 12, they can be 1-to-19. So every site has a site coordinator, and depending on how many students are enrolled in that site and how many staff members you have, you may have 2 or 3 group leaders. 60 students, you would have at least 3 group leaders at that site, plus a site coordinator, because that site coordinator is responsible for the registration of students, collecting the weekly fees, preparing deposits and things like that.
So if we had the right amount of staff, we would be able to serve more students, and our sites, we would have more sites open, which would help to
distribute the costs. Yes.
And keep in mind, we had to increase the pay, the hourly rate, to even recruit those staff.
So people are just not interested in working in after school.
They're not interested in a couple of different categories we have. So
absolutely.
after school just
I think a lot of people just ain't even interested in working.
Shauna, when are you expecting to hear back on these grants that you mentioned?
They were submitted to NCDHHS. We got word that they've received the grant applications, and they submitted back that they've received our application. So I'm not really sure of the timeline. I know that anyone who had like some of the other childcare facilities across the state probably have been eligible to receive some funds already and have been submitting things maybe ahead of us. So it just depends on what's available. But they didn't really give us a timeline. I would hope within the, maybe by the time we have our finance committee meeting, hopefully we will have some word and we can have some of those discussions then.
Do we have any sites that you've identified that are losing more money than other sites?
I haven't done it by site yet. I've been doing things more as a district in whole because you have district expenses. So I'm looking at revenue received, expenses monthly for salary, benefits, and everything else. So I'm looking at it at the district level right now. I haven't gotten into the site per site.
And have you looked at it as part of a retention for our teachers? Because our current prices are more than the public pays at a public facility.
Really, that would, my recommendation is for the fees to cover the costs. If the board, that would be a board decision, what you would want to do other than that.
Can I ask a question about the $15 hourly that the state, that's a mandate, right?
Right, but it's unclear whether it's required.
Okay.
So right now, of course, we're anticipating that we're going to need to increase that to the 15.
Because it has to be implemented by 23, 24?
Well, it is
Or
part of the
22,
FY23 budget.
Okay.
So that would mean it would be effective, like we would have to do it in July for next year. So again, those costs and potential increases were included in that rate. Mm-hmm.
Question two, when we consolidated from 27 down to 12 sites, one school will go to a main feeder school that was more financially stable. We're busing those kids to that. How does that busing get paid for? Is that included in the fee?
I was going to say, you might be getting a little, I do some of the dollars. Transporting them there, I'm not sure.
We do that with our transportation system, and that's paid for the transportation budget.
Okay,
We're busing
state
from-
budget.
If one school was going to another site, the kids from that school will be transported to the other site by the transportation system, not paid for by after. That's some of the other costs that Ms. McClam was talking about that we used to be able to recoup because we did have excess money and not able to do that right now. It's part of that $500,000.
How many are you busing? How many buses are going between sites?
Typically, one bus will carry all the kids that are at one school to another site. I can't tell you, I don't have my information with me, but I can't tell you exactly how many sites have multiple schools at their sites. But I can get that information for you.
Shauna, do you know approximately how many kids are in after school?
We're using right at 650. I think it's technically 638 right now, but we're projecting using 650 students. And of those, I think the number right now of employee or staff students is maybe 170 to 175.
Shauna, are we at capacity based on the ratio, the required ratio?
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a matter of-
I've talked to several teachers and we had our PAC meeting yesterday. I know there's employees that have come into the district mid-year and can't get a slot in an after-school program. And so, we really can't expand if we can't meet the ratio requirements.
So it's not a matter of increasing revenue to offset some of the costs. There's no way to do it because we're
Not
already-
without
Right.
staff.
Okay.
So, and employees get the first slots, correct, in the beginning of the school
In the
year?
beginning,
Thank you,
yes.
yeah. So they do have a benefit to that. They get the first, they get sign up first and then parents after that.
And Shauna, does the employee get the discount on the second child or only the first?
I believe it's for both.
I was told only the first.
It's a total.
I've got teachers saying they only get on the first.
I'll verify that. I'll double check.
Ms. McLam, do you know, and you may not know, prior to COVID, with the 27 sites, how many kids were we serving? Do you kind of roughly, just give me an estimate if you
Was
can.
it like 2,000? I
How
think
much?
maybe
2,000,
2,000.
wow. And
that
now
right?
right at 6:50, you said?
Uh-huh. Don't hold me to that number.
I got you.
Like, that should
That
be
sounds, yeah, okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to 9B, discussion of a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners. We have looked at the possibility of April 25th, 26th, or 27th to send that invitation and see if we can set up a joint budget meeting like we have in the past.
Who's going to send something to them asking for that? Staff or?
I could work with Donna Malarkey and maybe send a letter over tomorrow to the chair of the county commission, asking for a joint meeting on April 25th, 26th, or 27th here at the PDC.
I would like to offer a motion to ask the chair to develop with staff correspondence for a formal invitation for the Board of County Commissioners and their staff as they see fit to an invitation to a joint meeting on those dates mentioned.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? All those in favor say aye. Oh,
Aye.
aye. Mr. Price, did you have a question? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so I will work with Ms. Malarkey on that tomorrow, and we'll get that sent over. That brings us next to policies for review.
Good evening. You have 5 policies in the policies for review section. And if there is anything I can answer as far as questions on those policies, I'm glad to try. All right, thank you very much.
That brings us to board comments. Hearing none, board announcements.
Finance Committee will meet on Tuesday, April 26th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. And the Facilities Committee will meet on Wednesday, April 27th at 2 p.m. Via Zoom.
Policy will meet after finance on the 26th at 9 o'clock via Zoom.
Strategic Planning, Technology, and Transportation is scheduled to meet April 27th at 7:30 a.m. here at the PDC.
Curriculum will meet on the same day at 9 o'clock, right here at the PDC.
Madam Chair, if I may make an announcement, it is the springtime, and I love being outside, and so we have started back our Reading in the Park, which is once a month, and we focus on a park within the community. And so on April the 7th, which is Thursday, we'll have our second Reading in the Park, which will be at Creft Park, which is 803 Burke Street here in Monroe. We'll have snacks provided by an organization in our community called Project God. So bring a blanket, as many kids, parents, whoever would like to come, please come out and let's enjoy the power of reading at our first Reading in the Park for the springtime.
Okay, and I apologize. What time did you say on the?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't say, I apologize. 6 to 7 o'clock.
6 to 7.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other announcements?
That is nighttime, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I wasn't gonna ask it. I wasn't gonna ask it.
If you get to Crib Park at 6 a.m., you'll be there by yourself.
But by that point, I mean, days are starting to get a little bit longer too. So that sounds great. Thank you. Okay, if there are no more announcements, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.